It's 4 p.m. and we're bringing you the developing news and the stories behind the headlines. This is Storycon. I'm Patrick Paez. Here are some of the stories we're watching this Friday, May 17. China has reportedly empowered its Coast Guard to detain foreign South China Sea trespassers without trial. The South China Morning Post published an article about the new policy, which will take effect on June 15. The rule is on the heels of Atin Ito's coalition's second civilian mission to Scarborough Shoal, which Beijing claims as theirs. President Bongbong Marcos backs the Senate probe on Bamban Tarlac Mayor Alex Go. He says not a single politician from the province knows Go. For its part, the Office of the Solicitor General has formed a team to determine if Go is illegally holding or exercising public office. And a Senate sub-panel has started its regional consultations on charter change in Baguio City. Senator Sonny Angara and Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong are leading the discussions. Under study is a proposed Senate resolution of both houses, number 6, or the economic CHACHA. And joining us today are Ana Marie Pamintuan, Editor-in-Chief of the Philippine Star. And with me here in studio is Ronald Llamas. Ami, happy Friday.
Good afternoon. Happy Friday.
Good afternoon,
Ronald,
Ami.
Patrick.
Yes, si Ed absent pero at least sinasamahan tayo ngayon ni Ron. Hindi nawawala.
Ganda ng headline nyo, Ami.
Ha? So Ami, what are we looking out for tomorrow's banner of the Philippine Star?
Dagdag ko lang dun sa mga nabanggit nyo na, the Coast Guard is acquiring 5 patrol boats from Japan. Nagpirmahan na yata eh.
Yeah.
Meron ng press statement from the Japanese Embassy. Saka dagdag ko lang dun kay kay Mayor Go, na pati yung mga governor, vice governor, and the 13 board members of Tarlac nag-issue ng statement that they are against illegal gambling. Kaya lang medyo late na yan, ano? 1.5 years na into their term. Pero I guess na-highlight kasi yan dahil sa sinabi ni President Marcos, and the Solicitor General na nga is himself also gathering information kung ano talaga yung qualifications daw ni Mayor for the public office. Kasi hindi nga nabantayan ng COMELEC.
Alam mo, Ami,
Ronald, business, maibang topic.
Yes.
The Ayala Group has divested na from Manila Water. Tinurnover na binenta na kay Enrique Rason. 14.5 billion. Yan ang mga bago ngayon binabantayan natin.
Yes, normally stories about sinasabi nila a 2-week shelf life. Pero itong storya kay Mayor Go ng Bamban, medyo matagal na, no? Mahaba, tumatagal. To what do you attribute this, Ronald?
Well, yung context kasi rito ngayon is the elephant in the room, or rather, the dragon in the room, yung China. At papunta dito sa storya ni Mayor Go ay yung Chinese students, no, yung aggression sa West Philippine Sea, yung mga retirees, etc. So, medyo papunta, hindi naman siya tatawagin natin climax, pero bahagi siya nung nangyayaring mga istorya. Kaya very attentive yung ating mga kababayan. Nung lumabas yung storya na yan, tinanong ko pa yung ilang mga kakilala kong mga politicians at saka mga personalities sa Tarlac eh. Sabi ko, kilala nyo ba yan? Tao nyo ba yan? Kapartido nyo pa? Lahat sila sinabi, hindi. Sabi ko, paano nakalusot yan? Di ba? Hindi naman basta-basta susulpot yan. Pati sila nagulat eh.
Yeah.
No? Pati sila nagulat.
And that's basically the same sentiment of the president, right?
Yeah.
Pati siya nagulat. So I guess that's the reason why hindi mamatay-matay itong story nito, Ami, no? Dahil even no less than the president has commented on this, right?
Pero ang hindi nagulat dyan, yung mga nagbigay ng permit sa kanya, sa COMELEC, sa Bureau of Immigration, sa PAGCOR, etc. Sino yung nagbigay ng mga permit doon sa kanyang mga negosyo? No? Sino nagbigay ng permit sa kanya para makatakbo? No? Sino nagbigay sa kanya ng permit para makatira rito? So, sino yung mga yon? Dapat din i-paper trail din yan para hindi na maulit. Ang dami rin kasing mga opisyal natin yung nagiging, anong tawag doon? Nako-compromat. No?
Okay, how about you, Ami? What's your take on the story?
Sabi kasi ni Comlec Chairman Garcia, wala daw nag-challenge naman ng qualifications. So yung mga rival siguro dun sa Bamban, wala naman daw nagreklamo kahit nung it's already a year and a half into her term. Wala naman nagrereklamo kasi nakalaban niya noon na, ay, dinaya kami niyan, ay, namilian ng boto kasi yun ang suspetsa ngayon, di ba? Na pogo money o illegal gambling money daw ang ginamit. Wala naman kasing ganung complaint So ngayon lang, na-highlight nga lang yan na because of the Chinese issue. Kaya titingnan din natin kung anong mangyayari kasi mukhang naturalized citizen siya. Kung pang-local naman daw, pwede naman daw yung naturalized. Kaya tinitingnan din natin kung anong kalalabasan yan. Meron nga nagsasabi, after narco-politics daw, meron na ba tayong pogo politics na ginagamit yung pera? Hindi naman kasi lahat ng pogo hindi naman lahat ng pogo illegal Merong mga Pilipino na engaged din dito in Metro Manila in particular, mga Chinoy na legal nga yung pogo operations nila. So, kailangan kasing linawin din yung mga rules natin. So, ewan ko kung saan papunta yung magiging yung kalalabasan ng investigasyon kay Mayor.
At isa pang kailangan gawin siguro, Ami, hindi naman witch hunt, pero sino pa yung mga katulad niya na nag-fall sa cracks? No?
Right.
Diba? Baka
unnoticed,
baka
hindi napapansin.
Meron pa no? Na nandyan
Yes. Meron nga daw, di ba? May tinitingnan nga daw sila na similar cases, although walang gusto magbanggit kung sino nga yun. Pero we don't know kasi ngayon lang naman tayo nakabalita na may ganyan nga, pati apelido niya kasi Chinese na Chinese. Pero kung merong ganyan in other parts of the country, dapat malaman na natin ngayon kasi more than magto 2 years na
yung
malapit na ang kampanya malapit na ang kampanya for the next elections.
Yung presidential advisor nga, Ami, di ba? Si Michael Yang, presidential advisor yun.
Yes.
Hindi pala Filipino citizen, no?
Yes.
Pero nakalusot, di ba?
Okay, but is there some restriction on that, Ronald? I mean, being part of Malacanang before, may restriction ba sa appointment ng presidential advisor na hindi Filipino national?
Dapat, dahil
are there rules against it? Kasi alam naman natin, a presidential advisor to begin with is a very loose name. It's a loose title.
Well, it depends kasi kung anong klaseng advisor yan No, pero marami mga advisors kasi are very influential So kung minsan mas influential pa yan sa isang senador o isang cabinet secretary, dapat talaga i-due diligence yan. Kundi mato-Trojan horse ka dyan Or Manchurian.
Okay, Ronald, Ami, still...
Ronald, kung 1 peso a year, kailangan ba siyang kailangan ba siyang citizen? I don't think he's a regular advisor. 1 peso a year lang siya.
Pero nung na-expose kasi siya, nag-resign siya So, ibig sabihin, umiwas din siya dun sa legal vulnerability. Although may gray area nga yan. No? Pero nung na-expose siya, napilitan siya mag-resign. So, there must be something there.
Okay, Ami, Ronald, still in China, but on a different angle.
Yes.
We have Commodore J. Tarriela, spokesman of the Philippine Coast Guard, joining us today on the Story Conference. Commodore.
Magandang hapon, Commodore.
Hello, sir. Magandang hapon po sa inyo, sir.
Okay, sino na magtatanong? Ronald, Ami?
Commodore, ang nag-uusap ngayon, pinag-uusapan ng gusto ngayon, yung order ng China to the China Coast Guard na pwede na silang manghuli ng mga trespassers within their maritime domain. Although ang alam ko naman ang Coast Guard nila actually empowered even to engage in combat maneuvers dahil military yan Pero ano po ba ang mga reaction diyan sa Philippine Coast Guard natin? Iba naman yung nature ng Coast Guard natin. Anong reaction sa ganyan? Kasi by June 15, pwede nang arrestin mga fishermen natin napapasok sa lugar na kiniklaim ng China.
Well, una sa lahat, ma'am, my personal take on this is we need to understand na ang China na naman, nag-issue na naman sila ng ganitong law nila actually to intimidate ang civil society natin. And it's not just the Philippines who is the target of this kind of advisory ng China. They're also afraid that countries like Vietnam, Malaysia will have a civil society initiative like what we did nito ni Miss Rafaela, it's a very big problem for them kung hindi nila makukontrol ang civil society in different countries that will go against and challenge their 9-line claim. So, for my personal take on this, I don't think that they are really serious in implementing this. No, this is just another psyops na ginagawa nila para ma-discourage ang ating civil society for the Philippines and other countries. Kasi, gaya ng sabi ko, it will be a very big problem for them.
Commodore, clearly this is a scaling up. Mukhang malinaw na nasasaktan yung China dito sa mga ragtag civilian convoy na ito. No? I know this is not your mandate, pero tingin nyo ba pag ginawa nila yan ay kailangan din nating i-counter? Pwede rin ba tayong maghuli, mag-detain ng mga, hindi lang poachers, no? Kung hindi yung mga fishermen nila na magko-cross sa ating territory. I'm sure kakabahan yan sa mga preso natin eh.
Well, Sir Ronald, I don't want to preempt the guidance of the National Task Force West Philippine Sea and, of course, our Commander-in-Chief. But whatever will be the instruction of General Eduardo Año as the chairman of NTFWPS, definitely the Commandant of the Coast Guard, Admiral Gavan, will take the lead of General Año, sir.
Okay. Commodore, help us appreciate more the significance of this news coming from China, no? That was published in the South China Morning Post. My understanding is, talaga naman, di ba? Pag nag-trespassing, pwede hulihin ng Coast Guard. So, why this announcement? And they qualified it by adding that they can be arrested without trial. Ano po ibig sabihin nun?
Parang wala naman talagang trial sa China.
Yes, Commodore.
Well, totoo yan, sir, no? Totoo naman yung sinabi ni Sir Ronald na wala naman talagang trial sa China. So there's no reason na kailangan nila sabihin yun na you will be tried. But again, para sa akin, this is just a way for us to discourage ang ating civil society in having another civilian convoy. Dahil definitely nasasaktan nga sila rito. And then we need to go back, no? Yung 2020 na China Coast Guard law na sinasabi nila gagamit na sila ng use of force in responding to those people that will also trespass. Pero wala rin naman silang ginawa. Almost 4 years na yung Coast Guard law na yan, di ba? They're only relying on military-grade laser, water cannon. So para sa akin, this kind of statement na inilabas nila on the day na nag-declare si Ms. Rafaela na mission accomplished tayo sa atin ito convoy is just for them to counter this kind of narrative para takutin ang civil society not just here in the Philippines but in the entire Southeast Asia.
Okay.
So, Commodore, you're saying actually nothing new naman yan sa powers ng China Coast Guard. Kasi nga nabanggit ko na rin na in fact doon sa Baguio ng Coast Guard law na nabanggit nyo rin, they can actually engage in warfare. Yung Coast Guard nila is empowered to engage in combat maneuvers sa lugar na kiniklaim nila eh. So you're saying wala naman dito actually bagong power except nga na highlight lang ngayon ng South China Morning Post na may ganong announcement yung China.
Yes, and of course yung announcement nila na mang-arrest sila for 60 days ng detention, no? Ito lang yung bago dun sa sinasabi nila. But we should also understand, no, na the moment na gawin ng China to, it's actually more difficult for them to enforce. Kasi you have to deal with the Vietnamese fishermen, you have to deal with the Taiwanese, the Indonesian, the Malaysians. Kasi ang buong 9-line claim nila, sinasabi nila, that's theirs. Eh. So they have to deal with all of these countries. And it will create more problems than advancing their own interests.
Okay, Commodore Tarriela, I'm looking at the news from the Philippine Daily Inquirer online. Philippine Coast Guard detains vessel with 7 Chinese crew in Zambales town. Apparently, this happened yesterday. Do we have more details, Commodore?
Well, this is a Chinese Coast Guard vessel, no? That when we boarded, we have conducted the port state control, no? When you say port state control, it is the authority of the coastal state na mag-inspect ng safety compliance and MARPOL compliance ng isang foreign vessel sa kanyang waters. When we boarded this vessel, wala siyang naipakitang valid documents, no, to show the registration and compliance with different IMO conventions. So we are now coordinating with the Bureau of Immigration as well para ma-document itong mga Chinese nationals na crew nitong bangko na to.
So it's a merchant vessel, Commodore. It's a merchant vessel flying the Chinese flag. Ganun po ba yun?
Yes, sir. They are actually claiming na sila ay isang Chinese merchant vessel.
Okay, and the Chinese nationals, I think there are seven of them. They're now in Manila or still in Zambales?
They are still in Zambales. This vessel is actually reported to be a general cargo vessel.
Commodore, just in case na abutan nyo yung Chinese Coast Guard or militia in the act of apprehending Filipinos, no, lalo na kung ito ay bahagi ng civilian convoy in the future, ay kayo ba ay obligado na pigilan sila na gawin yon?
Well, the guidance of the President is very clear that the Philippine Coast Guard will continue our presence in the West Philippine Sea to safeguard the interests of the Filipino fishermen. And that includes harassment. No? Kasi para sa atin, we can actually categorically say na ang gagawin nilang ganito is actually harassment. Hindi naman talaga sila, they don't have legal reference to say na law enforcement function ang ginagawa nila dito, considering that this part of the West Philippine Sea is our exclusive economic zone, and the arbitral award has already invalidated the 9-dash line claim ng China. So wala silang international law backing to justify such operation. So on our part, this is just a harassment on the fishermen, and definitely the Philippine Coast Guard will carry out necessary action to prevent the Chinese Coast Guard from harassing our Filipino fishermen.
Okay, Commodore, I'd like to go back to this detained Chinese vessel, this detained Chinese cargo vessel. It says here that the vessel was intended was headed for Manila anchorage. I think it was, does this mean headed for Manila? However, due to high anchorage fees, they chose the more affordable anchorage, which is somewhere in Zambales. Ganun po ba yun? So this vessel is not trespassing. It's really headed for Manila, for the Philippines, to port in the Philippines. Ganun po ba yun?
Well, alam naman natin sa Port San Felipe, wala namang ports doon to be designated as anchorage area. So with that statement, it is obvious that they're just making an excuse, no? Na namamahalan sila sa anchorage fee sa Manila because there is no anchorage area in Port San Felipe. In San Felipe.
Okay. Do we know what sort of cargo this vessel was carrying?
Well, we deploying our Coast Guard K9 to look on the contraband dito sa barko na to. Wala naman silang dalang mga kargamento.
Wala. It's a cargo vessel
Wala.
that's empty. Parang ganon?
Wala
Commodore?
po, ma'am.
So ano daw ang gagawin nila if they were supposed to be going to Manila? It's a commercial vessel. Anong balak daw nila?
Well, that is something na kakaiba, no? That's why we boarded this.
Yes.
Kasi they also turned off their AIS. That's why it became a vessel of interest. The investigation is still ongoing, and we're still trying to figure out kung ano talagang dahilan ng cargo vessel na to na mapunta ng Zambales.
Commodore, in the wake of the warning, well, yung report nga from the South China Morning Post, will the government be discouraging our fishermen from going siguro close to Panatag, for example? Or may impact ba yan sa fishing operations natin in the West Philippine Sea?
Well, if you're going to ask me personally, no, since I said wala pa naman tayong nakukuhang strict guidance or advisories on the NTFWPS, this kind of statement from China should just be ignored, no? Dahil alam naman natin, the 9-dash line claim was already invalidated. This kind of enacted domestic law ng People's Republic of China is basically illegal, no? So there's no reason for us to tell our fishermen kasi parang sinabi na natin na we are respecting itong kanilang decision na to and that we submit ourselves dito sa kanilang advisory na ganito. So for us, our fishermen should not be prevented from going to the West Philippine Sea or even this kind of civil society initiative for convoy.
Halimbawa, Ami, yung mga fishermen kahapon na na-interview, tinaboy sila doon
Yes.
sa around Panatag. Parang hindi naman sila makakalapit talaga sa Panatag shoal. Tinaboy sila at
Yes.
ang ginawa nila, pumunta na lang sila doon sa civilian convoy at doon sila humingi ng supply, gasolina, pagkain, etc. Pero ang sabi nila ay babalik sila uli next week, no? Doon paano pa na sila 2 weeks na sila sa laot no? Kaya kinakailangan nila ng supply. So, in a way, successful yung supply mission, successful yung pagtaboy sa kanila ng China, pero sila ay babalik uli. No? I-assert nila yung kanilang karapatan. Maganda yung interview sa mga fishermen.
Commodore, may isa pang development ngayon. I understand the Philippine Coast Guard has signed yung ng agreement with Japan to procure five new patrol boats. Can you tell us more about this?
Yes, ma'am. No? Itong 5 97-meter vessels na to ang in-announce ng ating Pangulo noong November last year na na-approve na ng NEDA board. No? 97-meter vessel. Meron na tayong dalawang ganitong malaking barko. Kung maalala mo, ma'am, we've been mentioning in the last press conferences na meron tayong 97-meter na naka-standby ngayon sa Skoda Shoal. Today, 31 days na nandun ang Coast Guard vessel natin. So we need this kind of vessels na malalaki for us to have a prolonged presence in the West Philippine Sea.
Commodore?
Ito yung pinakamalaking vessel ng Coast Guard, 97 meters.
Yes, ma'am. And yung 5 na yan, ma'am, ang ina-expect nating i-procure ulit Japanese government. So try to imagine 5 more of those na dadagdag sa kakayahan ng Philippine Coast Guard will definitely boost our capability in maintaining our presence in the West Philippine Sea.
Okay, Commodore, I've heard it said somewhere that the Philippines is poised to become the largest Coast Guard in Southeast Asia at least. Are we anywhere near that, Commodore?
Well, if we're going to receive the 5 97-meter vessels, then there's a possibility that we can be the biggest Coast Guard fleet in the entire Southeast Asia. Pero we should also consider the fact that so building their Coast Guard capability together with MMEA, which is the Malaysian Coast Guard, no? Because not a single country in Southeast Asia would like to deploy gray ship in the South China Sea. Dahil sa paniniwala natin, we don't need to militarize it.
Okay.
Kung kaya't ang China nga din, nagpalaki ng China Coast Guard, although the mandates of the China Coast Guard doesn't align with our understanding of what a Coast Guard organization should be.
On a different note, Commodore, about Sandy Cay, no, marami kasing lumabas na statement this past few weeks from Secretary Gibochodoro, Secretary Anyo, Secretary Manalo, kung gaano ka-importante yung ginagawa ngayon ng China dito sa Sandy Cay. At posible, kung yung plano nila ay magpapatuloy, gagamitin nila ito to measure their territorial water, undermining the territorial water o Pag-asa, and measuring their EEZ from that territorial water. No? Pero di ba ang Sandy Cay nasa border o nasa labas ng ating EEZ? Paano ba natin, ano yung magiging strategy at saka conduct natin diyan para mapigilan yung insidious plot ng China?
Well, Sir Ronald, no? Alam mo naman na ang Pag-asa is also outside our exclusive economic zone. But Pag-asa has always been occupied by the Philippine government for a very long time, no? And the Sandy Cay is within the territorial sea of Pag-asa.
Yes.
And it also overlaps dito sa Subi Reef na nireclaim ng China din mula 2013 to 2016. So on our part, for the Coast Guard and the Armed Forces of the Philippines, we have been monitoring ang mga ganitong activity ng China and ensuring na hindi nila magiging successful in carrying out small-scale reclamation. That is the reason why, as early as now, we have already exposed this illegal action of China.
Okay, I'm just wondering,
Commodore,
Commodore, we seem to be, of all the claimants in the West Philippine Sea, the Pag-asa area, Spratlys area, we seem to be finding ourselves more in conflict with China. I wonder if it's because we are in critical or strategic areas, we're positioned in there, or is it because of other reasons? Like tayong pinakamahina or something like that. I just wonder, Commodore.
Or pinakamalapit sa US.
O pinakamalapit sa US, pwede rin yun.
The main reason kung bakit lang naman natin napag-uusapan ang aggression ng China in the West Philippine Sea, it's because we choose to publicize it. But I don't believe that it's only the Philippines that experienced the swarming of the Chinese maritime militia, the illegal presence of the Chinese Coast Guard, because we know for a fact that Chinese Coast Guard are also being deployed in exclusive economic zone within Paracel in Vietnam and also in Lucuña Shoal in Malaysia.
Okay.
So whatever we are experiencing, these countries are also experiencing. The only difference is that they don't tend to expose this kind of actions.
Okay, so it's a deliberate strategy on the part of the Philippines.
Well, the world knows na nag-employ nga ang China ng gray zone tactics using its Coast Guard sa kaya mga militia. And I also understand na pag ipinag-uusapan na yan ng different countries, including the Quad, may nabubuo na ba ng mga ideas how to deal with this? Any new measures to deal with it? Hindi naman confrontation, pero how to deal with China's use of these tactics?
Well, I won't be responding on the details that is being discussed by other allies. But let me highlight the fact that the contribution of the transparency strategy of the Philippine government with respect to China's aggressive behavior is that for so long a time, we always try to describe Chinese action in the West Philippine Sea as gray zone tactics. Even maritime security scholars have been mentioning this as gray strategy, short of war approach of China. But since we use transparency, we're not using this as gray zone. We're calling this all out, na this is just a violation of the international law. This is an outright display of China not respecting the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea. Whether they use water cannon or military-grade laser or violate the collision regulation, for us, the aggression and the presence of Chinese Coast Guard and Chinese maritime militia is just simply put violation of international law, and they are offenders of the international law.
Commodore, nabasa ko kanina yung paborito kong columnist sa Manila Times, si Bobby Tiglao. At sabi niya kanina ay kayo daw ang nasa likod ditong civilian convoy. No? Ano bang tingin niyo doon? May basihan ba yon?
Alam mo, Sir Ronald, minsan natatawa ako kapag napag-uusapan natin yung kaibigan natin na to. Again, ayoko na mag-respond sa mga sinasabi niya. Kahit sa Twitter, di ko na rin siya pinapatulan. Ang sabi ko nga sa kanya, since wala rin namang Senate inquiry pa, ang pinakamagandang activity para ma-realize niya kung anong tama at mali, magpa-family reunion siya. Tanungin niya yung mga anak niya or yung mga apo niya or mga pamangkin niya kung nasa tamang direksyon pa siya ng paniniwala sa mundo. I think our fight in the West Philippine Sea will enlighten him kapag nakapag-usap siya sa kabataan at sabihin niyang ang ipinaglalaban niya mas tama sa tinitindigan natin sa West Philippine Sea.
Okay, Commodore, back to Ami's point a while ago, no, if we can call this as Grayson strategy, what China is doing in the south, in the West Philippine Sea, would measured transparency, I think I first heard this term from Assistant Director General Malaya, would measured transparency be the counter strategy of the Philippines?
Well, first of all, I would like to give a much more clear understanding of what we do. Para sa akin, I always react when people say it's an assertive transparency. We don't need to over-assert, no? Para tayo nagiging OA kapag transparency nilagyan mo ng assertive, no? I don't also agree when people say measured transparency. Dahil para mangyayari yan, you are cherry-picking a particular information that you tell to the public.
Okay.
So, I think what AGG Malaya means is transparency, no? The transparency because we don't cherry-pick, we don't exaggerate things, we don't lies, we don't make lies, we don't fabricate things. Lahat lang na sinasabi natin sa media, sa publiko, ay parang katotohanan lamang. Then secondly, ang tanong, sir, kung is it only the transparency strategy that we will use in countering China? It is not just the one-all-be-all strategy that we are engaging in the West Philippine Sea. No? We can probably say this is the foundation of our approach in addressing Chinese aggressive action because from the transparency we have already engaged international community wherein we can build a strong alliance, support for the modernization, also for the economic and trade cooperation. It all started with transparency. So, in short, it's wrong to think that transparency is the only way to go for us to counter Chinese aggressive action. Transparency is only one of those strategy that the national government and NTF-WPS is doing in response to Chinese aggressive action.
Commodore, napanood ko kahapon sa video at mga pictures yung Chinese Coast Guard na nilapitan yung dalawang pangulong kasama sa convoy 80 meters away. Halos nakadikit na siya. Di ba delikado yon? At ano yung pwedeng gawin ng Coast Guard sa ganong klaseng mga sitwasyon? Dahil halos sagasaan na yung dalawang pangulong ng civilian convoy.
Well, for the Philippine Coast Guard, our protocol really, every time we have rotational deployment in Bajo de Masinloc, and there are Filipino fishermen na maaaring ma-jeopardize ang kanilang safety, we immediately challenge China Coast Guard, and at some point, we make sure na we can still assert yung pangkaligtasang ng ating mga mais ng Pilipino. Either we distract them by the Philippine Coast Guard choosing to get closer in the Chinese Coast Guard, or we launch our rigid hull inflatable boat para siguraduhin ligtas ang ating mga kababayang Filipino mangingisda.
Commodore, kailan dadating? When are you expecting the 5 ships from Japan?
The 597 meters, ma'am?
Yes, yung 97 meters. Kasi nagpirmahan na daw ng deal Mga kailan kaya yung dadating?
Yes, ma'am. Hopefully, it will be delivered by 2027. At least the first 97 meter na magagawa.
Okay, Commodore, are we getting anything from the United States? Commodore?
Hello?
Yes. Are we getting anything from the United States? I mean, in terms of aid or equipment?
Well, there are talks for the Philippine Coast Guard to also receive vessels from the U.S. Coast Guard, but it's also worth mentioning na ang U.S. Coast Guard naman has been very engaging to the Philippine Coast Guard in our capability building through education and training. Most of our Coast Guard personnel now are almost every month, no? Pumupunta sa Amerika para magkaroon ng capability training when it comes to ship handling, ships repair, all those kind of stuff that would develop the capability of our human resource in professionalizing the Coast Guard organization.
Okay. Ami, if we don't have any questions anyway, thank you, Commodore J. Tarriela, spokesman of the Philippine Coast Guard. Thank you for your time.
Maraming salamat,
Thank you,
Commodore.
Commodore.
You're
Maraming
watching
salamat po.
You're watching Storycon on One News. We just need to take a quick break, but we will be right back. This is the Story Conference Group or the Storycon Group. We've got the developing news and the stories behind the headlines. Welcome back to Storycon, the Story Conference. I'm Patrick Paez with Ami Pamintuan and Ronald Llamas. Ronald, we were talking about a while ago. We were supposed to have Ami, Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong, about yung tinatawag na basura crisis. Apparently, yung landfill somewhere there in Pampanga ipasasara ng Basis Conversion Development Authority. Umaapila yung mga mayor. Not Metro Manila mayors, but more mga Central or Northern Luzon mayors and governors are appealing because apparently dun dinadala yung mga basura ng a big part of Luzon. Now, but he couldn't come because he's busy talking with senators in Baguio City. They have a conference on charter change.
Buhay pa, Ami.
So, pinag-uusapan namin, buhay pa pala. Please explain, Ronald. Pwede pa ba? Malapit na midterms?
Parang mahirap na eh. Dahil file yung candidacy na sa October. Tapos kung pakikinggan natin yung speech ng presidente, mukhang tacitly inaamin niya na may mga destabilization plots within certain sectors of our government. So maraming nangyayari at sabi sa mga nakaraang survey, karamihan ng mga tao ay overwhelmingly ay hindi sang-ayon sa charter change. So hindi ko alam kung sinong mga magtutulak nito. Publicly dahil yung Senado parang mismo sila nagdedebate pa dun sa economic CHACHA.
Right.
Dahil merong tutol dun sa land ownership, may tutol dun sa ibang klaseng ownership. So, medyo matagal pa na proseso yan. Kaya tingin ko ay uphill. At the very least, uphill yung CHACHA. Whether it is purely economic o merong nakatagong political.
It seems well-attended, Nandiyan yung mga major leaders ng Senado. Nandiyan si Senator Loren Legarda, si Senator Sonny Angara, and Senate President Mick Zubiri. So, are the senators just going through the motion of holding this consultation forum or what? Just because they're committed to the president to take this up?
Baka mas yun yung dahilan. Dahil mismo si Senate President Mick Zubiri ay skeptical mismo dun sa CHACHA. Kahit yung version nila. Dahil nga wala sila nung 3/4 na kinakailangan para gawin yan. Kaya I'm not sure. Baka may nagsabi sa kanila, gawin nyo naman to. In support of the president.
Yes, Ami.
Baka gusto lang nga ipakita nga ni Mig Zubiri na may ginagawa siya. Because he and the speaker, di ba kinausap sila ni President Marcos and ang initial di sige, itatakal nga ng Senate. Ilan lang naman yung senador na yan Kulang na kulang yan. Kung sila lang yung bibilangin mo, kulang. It's a Senate panel. Wala nga dyan yung head ng si Robin Hood Padilla who is pushing for actually political reforms. Etong pinag-usapan dito kanina, yan talaga yung economic CHACHA lang yan Tinitingnan lang nila. And it's only Baguio. If you're going to conduct consultations, dapat yan nationwide Iisa lang yan. Wala pa sila dito sa Metro Manila. Pero mix us to show na eto ginagawa na namin, nagkukonsulta kami. And remember, mag-uumpisa yung magsasara yung session at magkakaroon ng yung final session ng 19th Congress. He has to show na may leadership siya to do what the president wants. Kasi baka magkatanggalan yan on the final year niya sa office. At least, pwede niyang sabihin yung konsultasyon, nagkonsulta naman kami, kaya lang wala nga nangyari, di ba?
So, Ami, parang minimum compliance.
Yes, minimum compliance. Saka, nandiyan naman yung leadership nga nung committee na assign nga to tackle constitutional amendments.
Pero wala yung head ng committee.
Pero isa lang yan. Remember, napakarami, isang syudad lang yan. It's not even a regional consultation.
Yeah,
Ilan yung region natin?
Or Ami, Ronald, and it's a good time to go around. Ano tingin mo, Ronald? Somebody who used to campaigns and is it a good time to go around now ahead of midterms?
Yung nakita ko isang senador dyan, re-electionist. Kaya para sa mga re-electionist ay magandang opportunity yan.
to go around.
To go around.
Yan, isa pa din yun, di ba? Pero ang timetable naman ng Senate, remember
October daw.
Ang pinakamaagang haya nila, October
Yes.
Kung sakali daw, kung meron man, ma-firm up, ipipresenta lang but nothing final by that time na State of the Nation. Pero actually, malaking bagay yung nilabas ng Pulse Asia, yung although much criticized by the House, of course, malaking bagay, 88% napakataas nun 88% against CHACHA.
Saka, Ami,
But
October.
nakapangako na yung mga senador siyempre. Not the senators actually, but si Mig Subiri, nakapangako na they will act on, yan na nga, yung RHB 6.
Saka,
Kaya ayan,
Saka, Ami,
Pag-uusapan.
October, filing of candidacy na. No? So, practically, October, filing of candidacy na. So, practically, kampanya na yan.
Yes.
No?
Hindi, pinakamaagang, ang ano nila, kung sakasakali daw matuloy, gusto nila yung yung plebiscite kasabay ng eleksyon Ayaw yun ng House It's too late for them.
It's too late for them. But at the same time, we're not
Pero
hearing...
malabo na yan.
We're not hearing...
Ilang linggo na lang tapos na tapos na ang session.
Break na.
Yeah.
Everybody will be preparing for the next opening session. That's in July.
July.
At the
Hindi
same time,
kaya yan.
Ronald, we're not hearing a lot from the House of Representatives, which used to pressure the Senate a lot on charter change. Ngayon, parang they've stopped pestering the senators on CHACHA.
yeah.
So, have they given up?
Well, sabi nga nila, silent water runs deep.
Yun.
No? Kaya indicative, ang balita ko sa House ay baka mas intense pa sila sa pagtutulak kahit tahimik sila.
Kahit tahimik sila.
So,
Pero paano
we're
naman
sensing that.
itutulak yun? Kapag people's initiative yan, lalong magulo yan.
yun naman ang problema. Paano?
Lalong magulo yan, di ba?
Yes. Pero
Even if matuloy nila, napakaraming proseso yan I don't think they can make it by the elections next. Kahit i-push nila yung people's initiative. Kailangan dyan ng verification. Yung verification process lang, ubus na oras na dyan
Parang ba kasi?
Aakit pa yan sa korte. Ipipresenta mo pa yan sa plebiscite. I don't think even the plebiscite aabot sa May.
Mukhang hope springs eternal
Okay, as someone who's used to political operations, Ronald, is there a window between now and midterms, or is it still possible to pursue charter change even after midterms?
Very small.
May ganun ba?
Very small at saka very improbable. No? Ayoko magsabing impossible.
Baka there's something you don't know that maybe proponents back in the House of Representatives know, di ba?
Posible,
so,
pero...
using your wild imaginations, your wildest imagination, ano pwede mangyari?
Kung gagawin nila yung laging binabanggit na whole of nation approach.
Yun.
No? Kung lahat, Senate, House, Cabinet, political parties, the President himself, talagang didiinan yan. Baka yung maliit na yon medyo lumaki. Perhaps not enough para ma-consummate yung proyekto na yan. Pero kung didiinan nila yan, tapos kukontrahin nila yung 88 to 90% na kontra, uubusin nila yung kanilang political capital. Ang tanong dyan, uubusin ba ng Presidente yung kanyang political capital para sa proyektong yan? Ay, duda ako.
Why not? Why not?
Dahil hindi naman siya kandidato sa 2028.
Exactly. So he can spend his political capital because he doesn't need to run for re-election.
Yes, pero at the same time, hindi siya masyadong beneficiary. Diba? Usually, nagtutulak dyan yung magbe-benefit Either term extension or lifting of term limits. Parang, at least sa body language, at least sa ating rules, parang ayaw naman ng presidenteng i-rock pa yung vote Baka yung iba gusto. Pero siya, duda ako. Parang chill na siya
Chill na siya.
Saka medyo magulo yung messaging from the Senate kasi nga si Robin Padilla, he's pushing for political reforms yan na nga yung sinasabi ng mga tao kaya nga hindi mapagkatiwalaan yung Kongreso. Pag inumpisahan niya yung economic, who can stop the lawmakers from proceeding na pati political na nga. At pag nandiyan na yung political, ayan na yung lifting term limits, ayan na yung opening to re-election, kahit mag-shift to parliament, yun ang suspecha. And you have this Duterte camp, very noisy at malaki pa rin yung considerable support sa grassroots na naniniwala na pag sinabi nila, kalokohan ng CHACHA yan, para lang yan sa term extension, naniniwala sila eh.
At saka
Kaya
yung,
nga, tinitigil yung mga rally ng mga Duterte.
at saka Ami,
Pinaparusahan yung mga nagbibigay ng mga permit.
yung head ng constitutional
problema
amendments na wala dyan sa Baguio, yung head ng constitutional amendments, si Robin Hood,
Yes.
clearly, yung kanyang political party is anti-CHACHA.
Yes.
Diba? Kakadalo lang yung
Yes.
kanya sa kanilang assembly. So, kahit wala siya dyan, ay pwede niyang i-delay ng konti yan.
He's not there
Oh.
because he's not running.
Kanya nga. Di siya
To my
re-electionist.
point earlier, ha?
Di siya re-electionist.
Yun. Di ba?
Sabi yung iba, Ronald, kapag the best time daw to change the Constitution, in the first 3 years of a president.
Yes.
Sa atin,
Yes.
Kasi daw after that, napakalaki na, lalong tumataas daw yung suspicion na magiging self-serving. Anong tingin mo doon sa observation na yan?
Tama yun. Hindi lang dahil sa doon pinag-uusapan ng term extension or lifting of term limits. Pero ang hirap din kasi sa second half dahil ang focus na ng tao ay yung next presidential election.
Palit na.
No? Kaya actually yung first 2 years yung pinaka-ideal No? Yun na panahon dahil mataas pa yung political capital ng presidente ng gobyerno. Pag after ng midterms na nagsisimula na yung bumaba. Tapos ang tataas ang political capital, yung tatakbo sa next presidential election. So magbabago yung complexion ng political landscape in terms of alliances, political loyalties, etc. Kaya medyo mahirap pag second half.
Kaya nga, yan ang problema ngayon kasi yung pinakamalakas ngayon, yung vice president, yung pamilya niya, sinasabi nga na gusto daw i-amend yung constitution para hindi siya makatakbo in 2028. Yan ang problema ngayon eh. Kaya nga ino-oppose yung CHACHA, di ba? Yan daw ang, kung yun ang bala kung magpa-parliament para ma-ease out si Vice President Duterte. So malaking yan, kahit whether it's true or not, yun ang messaging dun sa mga mga rally na anti-CHACHA mga prayer rally. Whether it's a prayer rally or not, yung consistent messaging nila, they're anti-charter change.
Okay.
Medyo mahirap, di ba?
Puro prayer rally.
Okay. Ronald, Ami, thank you for joining the Storycon today. Ami Pamintuan, Editor-in-Chief of the Philippine Star, and Ronald Llamas, our de facto and friendly political pundit.
Narinig ko na naman yung de facto.
Happy weekend, Patrick, Ronald.
Happy weekend, Ami.
Happy weekend, Ami.
Join us again on Monday at 4 p.m. for the Storycon. I'm Patrick Paez. We are One News, all sides, all the time. This is the Story Conference Group or the Storycon Group.